Hello and welcome to another episode of Who's Coming to Dinner, the episode of my podcast where I get a podcaster and, well, they throw me the perfect dinner party. Now, this week's guest, I'm actually looking really forward to this because I've had him on the show a number of times. You're bound to have heard him. If not here, you probably already subscribed to his podcast. But I've never had him on to get under his skin a little bit and find out a bit more about him. So without further ado, I just want to welcome a good friend of mine on the show, Satsu from Chatsunami. Hi, Satsu, and how are you doing?
Hi there. Thank you so much for inviting me back after the last episode. I know it was a very controversial episode on game collecting and such, but no, honestly, it is an absolute pleasure to be back on your show.
Thank you for agreeing to do this because I keep saying all the time that I really enjoy this and the Mind Wipe episode. I really like this because it gives an opportunity just to talk to podcasts like yourself more about you. Yeah, so I've had you on for some very unusual and fun topics in the past. So yeah, now we get to find out your food and your celebrity preferences. Before we get stuck into all that, how are you doing? I think when this, if I've timed this right, this should be airing right at the end of your Mass Effect month, which, you know, I might have had an involvement in. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about how that's gone for you.
Well, I think it will shock your listeners to know that you're indeed a Mass Effect fan. I know.
I've tried to keep it quiet, but yeah, I can confirm that.
It's your guilty pleasure, your hidden shame. You know, you're amongst friends here, you can admit it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're completely right. At the end of August, we have indeed wrapped up recording for Mass Effect month. It has been an absolutely fantastic, yet semi-stressful month. And not stressful in the sense of recording with you guys, because it has been the very first major PodPack collaboration. So, of course, I had you involved. I had Marie from the Two Girls One Reusable Cup podcast. I had Luke from the Nerdstalgic podcast. It was an absolutely fantastic time to be able to bring you all together and, yeah, just geek out about Mass Effect. And, yeah, pretty much just how amazing the game series has been for us, because, and I joked about it in the episodes themselves, the fact that you had indoctrinated me to actually play the games. Yeah.
You would put a post out about a game on Twitter or a question, and I would say my question to you would be, what's the best game you've ever played and why is it Mass Effect? And I think after 2.5 years it finally sunk in. Yeah, I mean, at time of recording, only the first episode is aired. And I remember you kind of asked me, you said, which game would I want to do? And I chose the third one because I think it's the one that wraps it all up. So it felt like the right one for me to want to be involved with. But I could have chosen any one of them. And it just shows how good an episode the first one was, and my love for the game, because I was thinking I should have done the first one because there would have been points I would have said about that. And I know I'm absolutely going to do the same when this week's one airs with Marie for Mass Effect 2. You could have just had me on and we could probably do 2 months of it. But yeah, I don't envy you because you've had about, 8 hours or so of editing to do from the 3 episodes, right?
Oh, absolutely. I have to admit, I think it has been probably the longest month that I've had to edit for so far. And that's only as of recording this episode, that's only the first 3 episodes. Because Luke and I's episode, I think it was, oh, goodness me, I can't even remember how long it was, but it was definitely over 2 hours, give or take. Marie and I's episode, the one that should be out already when this airs, but that it was about 3 hours in raw audio, and then I managed to drop it down to, I want to say, like 2 hours 13 minutes, which I have to say, that is still the longest episode of Chatsunami ever. It even takes over, so the listeners of my podcast will definitely know this through suffering through season one, but I wasn't as good with editing back then, so I would leave a lot more of the ums and ahs and the likes in. It still makes me cringe to this day, but because of that, the episodes were a little bit more padded. And I think the longest episode until then was a Christmas review that my friend and I did, where he got me to watch the horror film Silent Night, Deadly Night,
Oh, right,
and
yeah.
I made him watch Bone Alone, which is the not what it sounds like. It's I get that every time. It's not what it sounds like. It's like the dog version of Home Alone, and both equally bad films, but still entertaining. That clocked in at about 2 hours 10 minutes, and now it's about that was the longest episode for a while, and now it's Marie's episode at 2 hours and 13 minutes, and that's me like cutting back all the fat of that episode,
Mm.
all the pauses, the repetition, that kind of thing, trimming it down. It was a chunky episode, and I mean, I hate to say it, but unfortunately for our episode in Mass Effect 3, yeah, it didn't even reach that level
I
in terms of length. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we got to 2.5 hours, but the problem was, full disclosure, so we recorded that straight after the episode we did together about collector's edition. So we'd already been talking for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, hadn't we? Then we had a little sort of, we went away, made a cups of tea and all that, had a drink, and then came back. So I think we were recording for about midnight, right, in total. So it was about 4 or 5 hours. And if I remember right, that night there was a football game, wasn't there, for the Euros, which went to extra time, didn't it? So we'd already started then about 40 minutes late.
Oh, yeah. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, because
Yeah.
it was. Oh, who was. I can't even remember who was playing, but
I
yeah, no, you're
can't remember,
completely
yeah.
right. Um, just, just out of, like trivia for those episodes, I just double checked how long the episodes were.
Mm.
It turns out you and Luke have actually tied for second place.
Oh, really? There you
Um,
go.
and I know the Olympics will be well over probably at this point, but yeah, you both get the silver medal because both of you have an hour 50 for your episodes.
When you look at it, I think episode Mass Effect 2 is probably going to be the one where it's going to have the most content because, that was total departure. And anyway, we shouldn't get into that because
Oh,
you've got a
yeah.
whole month of it and everyone's going to be listening to that. I know this is going out after that, but is there anything in the horizon or in the future you can give us any sort of sneak peeks or teases about what's coming up?
Yeah, I'll be taking a bit of a break over September where I'll be doing some reruns of episodes. That's what I usually tend to do now. I didn't do it at the end of season one, but I wish I had. But yeah, there'll be a couple of reruns, the best of season four, which I have to say, every season it gets harder and harder because the episodes just become so much funner to listen back to and such. And then October, we're going to have a couple of interesting episodes. We're going to be debuting with the amazing Wisteria Moth, where we're going to be talking about Alice Madness Returns. It's such an interesting video game. I'll also be talking to YouTuber Honour's Diary, amongst a whole range of other spooky episodes. You and I, of course,
Yeah,
hopefully, if
yeah.
the stars align, we'll be able to record an episode for
I'm determined to
Dead
gate
Space.
crash your party
Yeah.
a lot more. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I've got so many ideas for you coming on Chatsunami. I'm like, we need to do that. We need to do one in Still Wakes the Deep. We've got so many.
We've had so many. We keep messaging each other, don't we, with possible collaborations. The thing is, I think we just keep coming up with more, but we've got to. Yeah, it's about now turning them into something. So watch your space, I guess, on that.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, other than that, in November we've got a Dragon Ball month coming up because it's the 30th anniversary of it debuting in Japan. So yeah, then after that, just kind of Christmas themed episodes, and then yeah, onto the horizon for the rest of season five. So it's going to be action packed, I have to say. And yeah, I definitely need to get you and the rest of the PodPack folk on.
Look, we're going to get stuck into this very shortly. But before we do, let's hear from some friends of the show. We're going to hear from Antonio and Justin over at Back to the Balcony.
Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, two titans of cinematic review. Sometimes right, sometimes wrong, but always captivating. Your hosts Antonio of the Cult-Worthy Cinema Podcast and Justin Henson of the Movie Wire are here to take you back to the balcony. I really don't do reviews, but for me it's more about like, hey everyone, these films exist.
When we go into Siskel and Ebert, we're not always going to agree with Siskel and Ebert, but, there's some aspects we may.
And I think with each episode we're going to understand these guys a lot more than we think we have in all the decades that we've been reading their stuff.
Hello, lovely listeners. This is Marie from Two Girls, One Reasonable Cup, and you're listening to Casting Views.
Right, so we are back, and we are going to get straight into this now. So, Satsu, you are tasked with telling us your perfect dinner party. So, as perfect as it's going to be, unfortunately, I'm already there. I'm guest number one, so you've got no choice about that. So, I've already stepped through the door. You've given me a plate of Pringles and some, lemonade. I'll make myself at home. So, what I want is you're going to present to me a course, and you're going to explain what it is, why you've chosen that, and then it's a person, celebrity, or a person of note, and why you've chosen them. We're going to do that for the start of the main dessert, and then after that, there's a few more questions I'll throw at you. So let's kick off with the starters. So what are we having?
So the starter is, funny enough, a dish that it's like one of the first dishes I learned to make. Especially when I went to university. And don't worry, it's better than university level, by the way. I just want to point that out. This is a dinner party. There's napkins everywhere. They might be Sonic the Hedgehog themed, but god damn it, it's still fancy. So the first course is maybe quite a bland one, but it's a lentil soup. Okay. With, of course, some very crusty bread, because you can't have soup without a warm loaf of crusty bread, let's face it. And if you do, what are you doing with your life? But yeah, this dish is, and it sounds weird to say like a family recipe, because it's not like overly complicated, but it's like one that, and no pressure for you to enjoy this after I tell you this story, but yeah, it's like one that, my granddad had made, then my mum had made, and then I learned from her, and it's quite a nice flavour, and also if you decide halfway through, oh no, I want a vegetarian option, you've got the lentils. So yeah.
No, do you know, I'm more than happy with that. So my wife comes from a family where they had a lot of homemade soup, and so she does the same. I think it was the same with Alex and Joey and Tim from the Game Club pod. I think they all started with soups. There's something about a nice bowl of soup with a big chunky piece of bread smothered in butter, right? For me, anyway.
It feels like such a British thing, doesn't it? Where it's like a big bowl of homemade soup, and if you want to be really fancy, not fancy, but if you're having lunch, you'll have a toasty beside it or something. That's the most British starter ever.
Do you know what? You're not going to have any arguments for me. So this is one you make as well, yeah?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's such an easy one to make as well, because all you need, and apologies, I swear when it comes to actually making it, I'll rattle through it, but really all you need is like, a couple of lentils, a couple of carrots chopped up, a couple of leeks, some ham stock cubes, or, if you're vegetarian as well, you could probably substitute them for vegetable stock cubes. And yeah, you can, if you decide, no, I want to go full ham, you can also add bits of ham through it, which I've tasted before and it's absolutely glorious. But if not, you can leave the ham to the side, add a bit of parsley, and honestly, it can do you for days. If you, portion it out, put it in the fridge, it is just such a versatile meal. And yeah, if you want to be fancy at a dinner party, just add like, the herb leaf on top and be like,
I was
yes.
literally going to say the little garnish on the top, right?
Dinner is served, please don't eat the leaf.
So do you do a lot of cooking?
Yeah, not as much as I used to. I mean, at uni I had absolutely zero choice. I had to like cook, and I mean I did have my ready meals and things, but I thought, well, I'm here, I've got this kitchen and the flat I was staying at, I might as well learn. So, my co-host Andrew and I, because we went to uni together, when I met him in my third year of uni, we would often like bake and cook and things, and honestly, it was a lot of fun to learn and pick up these kind of things, but especially for things like the lentil soup and the next course that we're going to be talking about, like they're quite special dishes to me. And I remember asking you before this to say, like, does it have to be something I can make, Because I didn't want to be pulling your chain going, oh yes, to begin, we'll have the lobster thermidor, which, I made.
If that was the rule, then I could never be a guest on this, because you'd be getting, you'd probably be getting a toasty to start, a toasty for main. I don't know, maybe some Pop-Tarts for dessert. So
I mean, that sounds fine to me, to be honest.
There you go, sneak peek into my episode. Okay, so look, tell you what, let's move on to who's walking through the door then.
And I just want to clarify, this can be a celebrity living or dead, right?
Yep, celebrity living or dead. It can be a person of note as well, so may not someone be, may not necessarily be typified as a celebrity, but yeah.
So the first one I came up with, and I just want, the reason I'm asking this is because the person has unfortunately passed away, but I don't want to, say it and then you have to break the news to me.
No, go for it.
That person being Christopher Lee.
Okay.
Which I have to say, he seems like such a fascinating person. And the reason I put him at the starter course is because there's just so much that I think he would be able to, share and have anecdotes and things like that. Because have you heard the stories behind like the filming of Lord of the Rings and things with him?
Not that I remember, no.
So, I mean, beyond him doing like a metal album and starring in all these horror films, I think I'm sure he had fought in World War II. And the reason I remember that is because he was talking to, and this is spoilers for Return of the King, but he was talking to Peter Jackson, the director, and it was a cut scene, but it was in the extended edition where his character Saruman gets like stabbed in the back. And he pulled Peter Jackson aside and he said, Peter, that's not what it sounds like when you get stabbed. He went into apparently great detail about how somebody sounds when they get stabbed. And of course, it's just the funny image of thinking of Peter Jackson standing there being like, okay, Mr. Lee. It's like, no, Peter, you have to be very, very authentic. And you're like, oh my God. But I honestly think he would be an absolutely fascinating person to get to know over a dinner table.
So what is it about him particularly?
I guess it's just, as I said, he's like, and this is going to sound like weird, but like a rabbit hole person, like the more you learn about them, the more you think, Jesus, that is really interesting. And I mean, because he's got a massive career, he's got a massive filmography and things. And as I said, his life just seems absolutely fascinating beyond that. I mean, I don't know many people who have recorded a metal album, who have been in Lord of the Rings, who have known Tolkien and Ian Fleming as well, and starred in fact, I was going to say two of the biggest film franchises ever, but he was also in Star Wars, keep in mind.
Yeah.
So, this guy, in terms of like being an actor, he's a fantastic actor, and he's just such a fascinating person. So that is what gravitated me towards him in terms of having him as a guest. And as far as I know, I could be wrong, touch wood, I don't think, there's been many people who have come out and said, oh, he's an awful person, no, he's vile, blah, blah, blah. He seems all right from what I've heard, but, yeah, that's why I chose him.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because while we're speaking, I've brought up his filmography, and his first appearance in a film was in 1948, with his final appearance coming in 2017. Now, what a career that is. And he did have a couple of TV episodes of a show in 2018. Now, according to Wikipedia, now some of these are going to be cameos, etc. But he's had 213 credited film appearances, which is just incredible, isn't it?
That is insane. Yeah.
And as you said, if we go through it, it's encompassed everything from, the original, well, what we call like the Hammer horrors, through to, Star Wars, through to Lord of the Rings. He was in The Wicker Man as well. Yeah, what a role he had in that as well. And TV roles I'm looking at, he's had 66, and he's done some video games. So he's done a voice in GoldenEye, Rogue Agent. He's been in the Lord of the Rings.
So he has, yeah.
There you go. He's been in Lord of the Rings games, Kingdom Hearts games. So you can't have avoided him, right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing, you can't avoid. Oh, Police Academy 2, Gremlins 2.
I mean, that, and he has such a distinctive voice as well.
Yes, yeah. And look, no, he had a distinctive look as well, right?
Oh no, absolutely. I don't know. He seems like, I don't want to say the perfect package of an actor, but he was an iconic thespian. He's a bit like, Peter Cushing, who,
yes, yeah.
I think ironically enough, I'm sure he came across him at some point as well. Both of them are just so distinctive, and just the way he carries himself and everything. But I think the downside of having him in the starter course is, you'd be so fascinated that your soup would be getting cold, and B, you would have that worry that, you're cutting your bread for your soup, and then he would be like, Dan, that isn't the way you dip your soup. Now let me show you. And you'd be like, okay, Mr. Lee, thank you.
I'm just going to say what everybody's saying right now. We need an episode of Chatsunami with you speaking like that throughout the whole. You've got to give the people what they want, Satsu.
This is true. Yes.
There you go. Right. Okay. Look, that's a brilliant start, right? Yeah, 4 points there. So let's move on to your main course.
So for the main course, I've actually got two options for you, because I genuinely couldn't decide, and apologies I've thrown you this utter curveball in the middle of dinner here. But two of them, again, both of them are kind of emotionally tied to myself. Not so much for the third course. Well, don't worry, dessert isn't as emotional. But your choices are, and I'll give you the choices first. You've either got chicken pie, which is, a classic, or you've got katsu curry.
Oh.
Now,
can we have both?
Well, you could actually. You could have a mini pie and a katsu curry.
Do you know what? Let's. So I want you to explain both of them, why they're important. But I think I'll choose the katsu curry, and the reason being is I absolutely adore both.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we've had pies a couple of times, so I think let's go for the other side of me. So yeah, I think katsu curries are absolutely fantastic. But yeah, let's hear your reasoning behind both of them.
So I'll start with the chicken pie first, and it was actually because, and apologies for getting into sad boy hours here with this one, but it was after one of my relatives had passed away, and one of my mum's friends had come over and given us like this dish of like chicken pie, and all it is just like, chicken, lentils, ham again. I don't know why I'm obsessed with ham, apologies. And some, I don't even know what this is. It's, white sauce.
Yes,
Like,
yeah.
like that's all I know it by. I don't actually know what white sauce is.
Yeah.
That's what it's labelled as in the shops. I'm like, what the hell is this? And a wee bit of puff pastry on top. Anyway, it's like really filling. It's really thing, but it's just such a tasty dish. And I thought, you know what? It's a dish that is, it makes people happier, I suppose. So I thought, you can't go wrong with a chicken pie. But the other one actually comes from a girlfriend, the katsu curry, because when she and I got together one day, she was like, "Oh, do you want to have curry?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And she went out and bought these, the curry cubes.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I want to say it's like Golden Gate or something like that. It's like a Japanese brand, but you can get them in like Sainsbury's and things. And I swear to God, I'm not sponsored by any of them, but you can bleep that out.
That's fine. We'll keep that in if
Yeah.
they want to sponsor here. Yeah, go for it.
But she brought it back once, and honestly, it's one of my favourite meals of all time. It is absolutely incredible. All it is it's the cubes, it's the chicken thrown in, chop up some tomatoes for that kind of extra moisture, put as many like veggies in there as you want, stir it for a while until it all melts together, then plop it on top of some rice. It is one of the best dishes I've ever had, and every time we have it, I don't know, I'm always happy after it because I'm just like, this is an amazing dish by, someone that I love. So, yeah,
It
absolutely
is.
fantastic.
I mean, firstly, obviously, yeah, you've got that personal connection, and I love, I love food, but I love like curries and anything herbs, spices, marinated things. Anything that's got a lot of flavour. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't have. I've only sort of had katsu. Well, I say fairly recently. We're probably talking sort of 10 years or so ago. But I've not had it that often. But the first time I had it was me and my wife, my girlfriend at the time. We were in Camden. We'd spent a day in London. We'd walked to Camden, wanted something to eat, and there was just a few food stalls there, and we didn't know what to get. And there was this place, one of the stalls was selling katsu curry, and we'd not had it before. We said, "Tell you what, let's get that one between us." And oh my word, was it absolutely gorgeous! And that's it. And then I've not had it too many times since. And sometimes you might go to a chain and have it, and it's just not the same as that. Did you say you make it at home, or your girlfriend makes it?
Well, I decided to steal the recipe, so yeah, we both make it now. But,
yeah, so homemade's always going to be better. But yeah, what a dish. But like I said, the chicken pie, absolutely. I'm very much a pie person. Love my pies. It's funny what you said. One of my memories of one of my best memories of school, say, was food related. It was at food studies, and I made a chicken and leek pie. And to this day, that's probably the best thing I've ever made, and I never made it again. But yeah, something so sort of simple again, but comforting, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, it's one that I brought onto university to, make it for my flatmates and things and friends. And
yeah.
I mean, Andrew, if you're listening to this episode as well, you can attest to it, because one time him and I were making it and he decided to cut the extra bit of puff pastry and write the word pie on top.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, so just in case you didn't know it was a pie, he had written it. Yeah. Just PIE, just there.
I'd be putting my name on it. This is my pie. That's fine.
Mine.
So anyway, I mean, you don't live that far away. So, I mean, it feels like you should be making, PodPack dinner. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, see, no, seriousness, if we finally get this 2025 meetup sorted, I will be bringing home baking and things.
The PodPack platter. There we go.
Yeah. You know what? That's a better name than I could have ever come up with.
Right. So, stellar choice for Mill. So, who's the next guest to be joining us?
So, this is going to be, again, a bit of a curveball, a bit of a weird one, because I started thinking about celebrities that I've And I use this very loosely when I say I've met them, because, I mean, I've seen them talk and everything, and I haven't, like, met them face to face. Well, I met him once face to face because technically I've got a picture with him, but you know Doctor Who?
Oh, I've heard about Doctor Who.
Yeah.
It's a franchise. I'm kind of aware. No, yeah,
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
yeah.
So I was listening through the actors that, that have been in it, and I thought, could I do, David Tennant, Peter Capaldi, those are the kind of ones I was flipping between. But one that I think would actually be very interesting is Colin Baker.
Okay, yeah.
So, the Doctor, you might not have seen his episodes. I have to admit, I've not really seen much of his, like his run as a Doctor, but he's the one with, the multicoloured coat.
Oh, yeah, I know who he is. Yeah, I've seen him at a few Comic-Cons as well, yeah.
See, like, no shade to him, but it seems as if he's like at every Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Whenever they need a Doctor there, it's like it's always Colin Baker. And I have to say, it would be easy for me to say, like, oh, David Tennant or Peter Capaldi, actors who are, very widely regarded and everything. Don't get me wrong, Colin Baker is a great actor as well. But I just remember years ago, the first time seeing him, and I mean, not only does he have like a very, warm energy to him, but he had so many interesting stories. And I remember I saw him again at, I want to say like 2019, or maybe it was before that. It was like an Edinburgh Comic Con. And he was basically talking about his experiences with Doctor Who fans and things, about, how much the show meant to them and how much they told him specifically, like, it helped them through hard times. He seems very interesting because he became the Doctor at a point where the show was getting lambasted both by the public and by the BBC. So it was kind of becoming not as cool to like anymore. And there's like a lot of very bizarre choices at that point. And this was before they moved on to Sylvester McCoy, and then they axed the show completely before they brought it back in the early 2000s. So I genuinely think he would be an interesting person to come along, talk. And he was actually on Come Dine With Me as well. I mean, this is years and years ago. I think he was on Come Dine With Me, because that's one of the few things I remember from the first speech that he gave, or not speech, but like the talk he gave, that he had been on Come Dine With Me, and he was told that he had to take all the Doctor Who stuff off his walls because it was, like, for anyone who doesn't know listening, it's a show that was published by another channel, Channel 4. They didn't have the rights to show like any Doctor Who or BBC stuff, so he had to like take it down. And then he was talking about like the kind of behind the scenes process. And I have to say, this sounds so stupid, but I found that infinitely more fascinating than someone putting their hand up for the 50th time going, "What's your favourite Doctor Who villain?" And you're like, "Oh, we know." Oh, but yeah, no, that's who I choose.
He's, again, another brilliant choice. And, just looking at it now, he's been in TV for 50 plus years, and these may not mean a lot to anyone potentially outside the UK, but he's been in those classic shows. So he's been in Juliet Bravo, obviously Doctor Who, Casualty, Jonathan Creek, The Bill, Hollyoaks. He's been in Doctors. What else has he been in? Emmerdale. He's been in the last couple of years. He's had 50 years on the stage. He's also done a few video games, with the most recent being this year. He's a voice in Fallout London, apparently. So, Slade, if you're listening, let me know if you've heard him. But it's funny, because if you say to me Doctor Who, obviously outside of the current ones, Colin Baker is who my mind goes to. Even though I didn't watch his show, my Doctor Who, as it were, was Sylvester McCoy.
Mm-hmm.
It's Colin Baker, weirdly, that my mind goes to, because I've just always got the image of him being that quintessential Doctor Who,
Well, no, totally. I mean, he is definitely the one, other than, of course, Tom Baker, when you look at him and he's got like the scarf and the hat and the big long coat. Like, he's the iconic image, but I have to say, because he's got the multicoloured coat, because I think he said, again, at one of the Comic-Cons, that he wanted something more like Christopher Eccleston's outfit, you know, with the leather jacket and the trousers and things. I feel as if, and Christopher Eccleston is a fantastic actor and everything, but I think if we brought him to the dinner party and we started talking about Doctor Who, it would get very hostile very fast. I think there's a bit of bad blood there. I mean, as I said, David Tennant as well. Between Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant, they are the Doctors that I started with. So whenever I think of Doctor Who, I always think of them first and foremost. But I don't know. I always feel as if there's quite a intriguingness about the older Doctors, just in terms of the stories that they can tell, because nowadays it feels as if Doctor Who, and you've heard me ranting about Doctor Who like hundreds of times, so apologies, but you do feel as if a lot of them, you know, it is popular to like Doctor Who now. Oh, well, you know, the mileage may vary on that opinion, but you know, it's like more of a popular show than it used to be in the kind of 70s, 80s, and yeah, I feel as if that landscape is interesting to know about, especially both in acting and in that particular show. So, yeah, no, it does seem like a fascinating person.
Yeah, and I also I'm going to put a call out to anyone who can help me. I did mention it on Twitter once, but as this is called Who's Coming to Dinner, I had this idea. I would love to get, if anybody can get hold of a Doctor Who actor, past or present, or even, you know, the assistants or anyone involved with Doctor Who, I would love to have them on for a Who's Coming to Dinner episode, as in Doctor Who. So yeah, help me make that happen and make my imagination come true there. So.
Well, there is a Comic-Con coming up soon in Scotland where all the Doctor Who's are going, or sorry, the Doctor Who actors are going to be there. So,
Satsu, you know what you have to do for me now. If you're a true friend, yeah.
I just have to throw your business cards at them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, look at that. And yeah, what food we've got so far. So we are now going to move on to the final course of the meal. And before you give it away, it's a question I always ask, and I find it a question because it's something I always think myself, are you a dessert person or not?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, if it came up to the choice of, do I want a starter and a main or a main and a dessert, I would always go for the main and the dessert unless there's like nothing.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, like, do you not find that in restaurants where sometimes you can find some really good starters, but then others you're like, you can take them or leave them compared to the dessert menu?
I think it's that I'm generally not a sweet tooth, because I find also most restaurants it's going to be like a chocolate brownie or a chocolate cake, and I'm not saying there's a problem with those, or a cheesecake, which I do like a cheesecake, but I'm not massive fan. But no, if I had to go for the 2 courses, it would be the starter and the main. And if I went 3 courses, I'd ask for 2 starters or 2 mains. But no, I mean, look, I will never struggle to find a dessert that I'll like on a menu. It's just, I tend to go for the starters. So
that's fair.
Okay. So on that then, what are you serving up?
Yeah, to be honest, it's a little bit bland in comparison to the other ones, but I feel as if something quite light at the end of a meal, like ice cream, or because this is the thing, it's like if you've had a heavy, main course and maybe not as heavy starter, but if you've had that and then all of a sudden someone plops like a really heavy sticky toffee pudding in front of you, because I mean, I would probably be the kind of person who would be like, who would give you ice cream like a good vanilla, or basically insert any flavour you want here. But
you're not serving up Viennetta. I thought you said this was a classy affair.
Well, that is true. Yeah, with the ripples and the... Do you know, I haven't had Viennetta in years. But
then go out tomorrow and get some.
I mean, some of your listeners further afield are going to be so confused, but honest to God, I remember seeing that when I was younger and thinking it was just such the fanciest thing because of the way it was shaped, it was packaged. Honestly, marketing is
Yeah.
done wonders. It's like, the Ferrero Rochers,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah,
chocolates,
yeah.
where they were wrapped in gold and everything. And you always think, I mean, they are relatively expensive, but you think, wow, these must have cost loads of money and things. And when you actually buy them, you're like,
I,
I
I
guess.
think I think we've mentioned it on here a couple of times, but for those who aren't aware, maybe obviously, so Viennetta, yeah, it's been around I think since the 80s, and definitely in the 80s, 90s at most, it was marketed as like a stylish dessert, wasn't it? And they would cut through because it's got like thin layers of chocolate, and they would cut it, and you'd hear the crunch, and it was supposed to, it's almost like ASMR, right? It's like food. And it was seen as stylish. So if you had that, it's like, oh, we've got the Viennetta, who's coming around for dinner, kind of thing.
You're not wrong, genuinely.
Yeah.
As soon as the Viennetta was coming out, you knew it was going to be a good dinner. You're like, oh, can't wait.
Yeah. So and it was a nice box. It wasn't your tub of ice cream that you scooped out with a spoon or anything. It was a nice presentation, right?
Well, I'm gonna have to crack open the Viennetta for you now. I mean,
a nice mint one if you can do that.
Oh.
But you're going for a nice traditional bowl of what, vanilla ice cream, are you?
Yeah, unless you've got any preference, mint chocolate chip. That's also a favourite.
Oh, I do like my mint chocolate chip. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah.
I mean, my partner's gonna, have me if I don't mention this, of course, but there's a particular brand in Scotland. I don't know if it probably is in England. I'm saying this like it's Iron Brew, you probably haven't heard of it.
Yeah.
But there's a particular brand called Mackie's ice cream.
Okay.
And I don't even know how to describe it. It's not really vanilla, but it is kind of like a smooth flavour. Like it's kind of vanilla, but it's not. It's it's hard to kind of describe it, but it's like a really good kind of plain-ish ice cream. You can't see it. I'm waving my hands very nondescriptly here, but yeah, honestly, it's such a good ice cream. But again, if you've got Viennetta, like.
Well, I'm just looking. The big supermarkets here all sell Viennetta for £2 a pack, which doesn't feel too bad.
Didn't know it used to be £1 at one point.
Probably, and it's probably got a lot smaller.
Yeah.
But no, do you know what? I think, having said that, I think if you serve up a small bit of ice cream, people might say, "Oh, that's so plain," and that. But I think at the end, it's a palate cleanser. I think again, a big like heavy chocolate and caramel, just kind of almost makes you even more thirsty at the end of the meal, right? So a nice little quenching sort of dollop of ice cream.
Well, I mean, if you're hungry for more, and this is something that I have to admit I am terrible for doing when it comes to like making bigger dinners, like the 3 courses, and I learned this from my parents, so you can blame them. But afterwards you have your, like teas and coffees and things, and then
I do like a coffee and espresso, a nice espresso after a meal,
And then the cake gets brought out, like a kind of Victoria sponge, because that is something I can make, I have to say. That's one of the few things that I'm fairly confident. Give me a couple of eggs, some flour, some sugar, some butter. I can whip it up easily. I'm not going to say it's bake-off quality, but I can say it's tasty enough. Even a thin slice of that, or I can also make shortbread as well.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Well, actually, technically, I've cannibalized it from another recipe, which again, honestly, I could bake 1,000 things for you. Millionaire's shortbread. Have you ever heard of it? Yeah. Although I have to say, I remember, again, my friend Andrew and I, we made it at university for the first time, and they get you to make your own caramel. But seriously, just buy it from a can. Honestly, because it's just so much easier. You can make your own shortbread base, so that's basically where I got the shortbread recipe from. Can make it like that on its own, or I can pour caramel and chocolate on top, and then boom, you've got caramel shortcake. Obviously, I'll have to put it in the fridge first, because I don't want you just dipping your hands into liquid caramel and chocolate. I mean, you do you, but yeah, I wouldn't feel right doing that for you. But yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I've got some breaking news, though, about Viennetta. Still on Viennetta here.
Uh-huh.
Apparently, I think they have done it in the past, at least. So Viennetta on a stick. So it's almost like a mini version.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
There you go.
Not that I don't believe you, but I'm Googling.
It looks like it's real. So yeah. If you Google Viennetta on a stick, and you'll see it.
Yeah. I was going to say, I actually was half expecting you to say they had like moulded it into the shape of Daniel Craig.
Yeah, no, we're going to move on. Moving smoothly.
Yeah, flashbacks from that
Yeah.
episode.
Okay, so classic ice cream to finish. So who is the final guest to walk through the door?
So going back to the kind of coffee and cake moment, this is someone who, I don't know if you've watched this particular show, Twin Peaks, because I know you'll know of it, but...
Oh, I remember seeing it at the time, but it's not one I remember too much about.
So, you know the main detective in that, Kyle MacLachlan? Like, he's been in other things. He's been in the recent Fallout TV show. He's been in... I think he was in the Flintstones movie at one point.
Not that I've seen it, but Showgirls.
Oh, so he was, yeah. He was in quite a lot of David Lynch films. Like, he was in the original Dune. He was Paul Atreides, just FYI.
He was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. again. He's another one in The Good Wife, Portlandia, How I Met Your Mother, Desperate Housewives, Law and Order, Sex and the City. Yeah.
Oh, he's been in loads. I honestly just feel as if, again, he seems like a friendly enough person, and, you know, he loves his coffee, he loves his wine and whatnot, and I just gotta ask him why, for, you know, when it comes to like Twin Peaks and things, because the amount of films he's done with David Lynch, you know, he's done that, he did Blue Velvet was the other one. There's been a couple, but he just seems like such a charismatic actor. You know, he's doing his job right in that regard, but yeah, he just seems like the perfect kind of bookend to the evening if he's coming through for coffee and chat.
Yeah, he still has, but he had a very striking look, didn't he?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, even nowadays though, he's kind of matured gracefully. Ironically enough, like wine, he's matured like a fine wine. But yeah, you know, he definitely had like a what's the right word without sounding very parasocial there? You know, he had like that.
He's got something about him, hasn't he?
Yeah,
like that X factor, as they say.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Now, isn't this also another carry-on sort of from a weird film and TV and game merch tie-in? Didn't you bring something about the June? Was it a June colouring book? Did you mention that?
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was based off the 80s. I want to say 1984 it came out. And as I said, Kyle MacLachlan was the main character, Paul Atreides, who's also played by, I want to say, Timothée Chalamet and like the new ones.
Yes, yeah.
And yeah, there was a coloring book that came out, and it was like, oh, look, it's his dad dying mid-scene. Colour that in, why don't you? And it's like, what is going on here?
You're in tears as you're colouring in.
Oh, yeah. Getting the crayon wet, yeah.
Okay. I think, look, you know, what you've chosen, so... Let's do the food. So you've got lentil soup to start. I went for the katsu curry for main and ice cream. Can't fault that menu. And yeah, Christopher Lee, Colin Baker and Kyle MacLachlan. I mean, look, you know, what a fascinating set of people and stories you've got there. The question I kind of like to ask, do you think they'd all get on if they were sitting around a table?
Yeah, I would think so. I don't feel as if they would be very... angry towards one another. I don't think.
Do you think they get on with me? Do you think they get on with me?
Again, you know, the katsu curry's getting cold and the ice cream's melted because Christopher Lee's like, did you know I was in Lord of the Rings? It's a very good trilogy. You feel like, oh, Mr. Lee, please, we love you. Come back on the anecdotes.
Oh dear. I think they get on. I think they get on. Now there are some questions just to finish off with. Actually, a random one I'm going to throw at you. Phrasing of this. Do you drink much? So is there a drink that you sort of serve up?
Well, if I'm serving, you know, Viennetta, I have to serve Slur, which of course is the very fancy non-alcoholic version. Which again, you know, when I was younger, at least, I don't know if you were the same. Whenever my parents would bring it out, and you know, it's for anyone who doesn't know, it's like kind of a fizzy non-alcoholic drink in a bottle, but it almost gives that vibe or illusion of, oh, it's an alcoholic drink, and you know, it's 110% not. But yeah, we probably have to serve that because I'm going to be honest, I don't really drink in real life, so I have no idea. Because I always remember going to a distillery with my dad, and at the very end, you know how they give you like the dram of alcohol, the dram of whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
I remember they gave us one, and they were very insistent, saying, now whatever you do, we can't tell you where we got this from, so don't ask us. You know, it's a distillery from, I think, the Highlands or whatever. And I was like, right, okay, fair enough. You know, like me, completely not that much into whiskey, but still fascinated. And the person said, now, this next one is going to taste very peaty. And, you know, I thought, what the heck does peaty mean? And then I took a sip of it and I was like, yep, that's peaty. I was like, yep.
I'm not a massive drinker, but I did get, about 5 or so years ago, I did get into whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, my favourite is, and do you know what? I'm not going to remember. Oh, Lefroy. That's it, Lefroy whiskey, very peaty.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife doesn't like, you know, she just doesn't drink alcohol that much. She likes wine, a bit of wine, but we don't tend to drink it much in the house. And the whiskey, that Lefroy, has got a really strong smell. And even sometimes, what I used to sort of drink it after she'd gone to bed because I used to like the smell, but she'd come down the next morning and then could still sort of smell it. And yeah, because it's that strong, that potent. But yeah, I get what you mean. It's definitely got a strong flavour if it's a good one.
Yeah. It's got a strong aftertaste as well.
yeah. And do you know what? It's funny you talk about that Schlur. It's funny what was marketed or is marketed as being fancier than it is. So we've mentioned Viennetta, you've mentioned that. And then as you were saying that, what came to mind was like, do you remember like even bottled water like Evian and Perrier? I mean, Perrier used to be like, because again, it came in a glass. You're probably far too young to have ever seen it or know about it, but it was marketed as, the almost like the posh water to drink. And it's funny how things change over time.
All it takes is a glass bottle, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, even recently, I was staying over at a hotel and they had provided, like, bottles of water. And, you know, I opened up the fridge thinking, oh, right, it's going to be like a plastic bottle or whatnot. No, it was in, like, a glass one with... this is a weird thing. I don't know if you've seen this. It had, like, a ring pull on the top. You know, almost as if it was, like... a can opening, but unfortunately when I tried to pull it off, it broke in my hand. So I don't know if you've ever seen like a fully grown Scotsman try to stab the top of a bottle of water with the back end of a spoon. Long story short, it worked and I had to decant it out to glass. So yeah, fun times.
The lengths you go to go. So I once when we moved into this house, we had a bottle of wine. Realised we didn't have a bottle opener, and it was a cork one. So all the methods I set to try to open that bottle of wine doesn't need to be gone into. Sorry, right. So on that, moving on, I've got 3 random things now to throw at you. So what film would you make us watch? Doesn't have to be your most favourite film, but, what film after a meal says, you want to get to know me a little bit more? Watch this film.
Well, I had a long think about this, and normally I would have gone for something like Lord of the Rings, because it's one of the films that I do think is genuinely perfect. You've got the three, the whole trilogy, but then I thought maybe 3 films is a bit too much for a dinner party, so I decided to scale it back, and I guess the one I would go for, and it sounds weird, but I would probably say Terminator.
Okay, yeah, all right.
So for the first one, like as I said, see if we had time for it, 100% Lord of the Rings, but then again, as I said, Christopher Lee would be in the background saying, "Oh, my scene's coming up." It's like, okay.
Yeah, but would you show us a theatre version, the extended version, the double extended version, the super duper hyper extended version, the collector's super duper hyper extended version?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to go for the Christopher Lee edition there. There's like 20 hours per film. Yeah, no, Terminator's definitely the shorter film.
Okay.
Purely.
I wasn't expecting. No, I was going to say I wasn't expecting that, but yeah.
Out of curiosity, what film were you expecting?
No, I think I was expecting something more, based on your kind of like on your podcast, maybe a bit more fantasy, maybe. I mean, I'm not saying Terminator is realistic, but you know what I meant. Yeah. More like a Lord of the Rings type film.
Yeah. Because that's the thing, if I go for something like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, both, trilogies that I absolutely love, again, it's 3 films. And I feel as if you met people for the first time over a dinner party, they're no coming back after the second. They'll say, right, okay, I'm going to the toilet. Then they'll pick up the Viennetta and walk out that door. So
no, they ain't taking that Viennetta out of the house.
Yeah,
you leave that on the table. You leave that on the table.
Leave your spoons by the door. Thank you.
They can fight me for that. I tell you what, I'm a very mild person, but don't take food away from me.
Yeah,
right.
So yeah, the reason being that the very first time I ever saw this film, like fully in its entirety, was around 2015. And it was the first film that in fact, it's the reason that I met my very first co-host, Adam, for the Chatsunami podcast.
Okay.
You might have heard him more in season 2, 1, 2, and 3, but that's the reason him and I bonded. And, it was like a double bill. It was like Terminator 1, Terminator 2, but I genuinely think Terminator 1 is like one of the most perfect films out there in terms of sci-fi, because you look at other films and you can certainly nitpick and say, oh, this didn't hold up well, oh, that's not great, this isn't great, because see, if it was closer to Christmas time, then 110% I would have told you It's a Wonderful Life, because that's a beautiful film. But again, it's the end of August going into September. I don't think they want to watch a Christmas film just yet. Although I do think that's one of the best films of all time. But yeah, if you're looking for something more omni-seasonal, let's just say, then yeah, I genuinely think Terminator is one of the best sci-fi films out there. Maybe a bit bloody, but then again, it's either... I was going to say, either you watch goblins getting killed, you watch... like fantasy robots getting destroyed, or you watch a man jump off a bridge and learn the meaning of life. I have to. Yeah, sorry.
No, Terminator is a great choice. It probably looks a bit dated now in terms of the visuals. The first film, that is, but I watched it at the time. Let's say I was far too young. Well, I watched it when I was younger than the audience should be. Let's say that. But I remember at the time it being terrifying. Like I said, the first film is a bit dated now. I think, weirdly, the second film still holds up visually, I think.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that I mentioned, and again, sorry not to plug myself too much, but when we did the Terminator Month episodes, I had to, sorry, I say had to, like I was under duress. I watched like all of the Terminator films, so we did it in kind of 2 film increments. So we reviewed the first 2 films, then we reviewed 3 in Salvation, and then the rest. And something I noticed was that Terminator 2 was like almost the ground zero in terms of all of the following films wanting to be like it. So, they had like the wacky Terminator with the gimmicks and, all of that. They wanted the high bombastic action sequences and things. And for Terminator, the first one, I feel as if it's a lot more grounded and, I don't want to say realistic, but do you know what I mean, in the sense of you can feel the weight of the characters' decisions.
Yeah.
And the second one is like one of the best action films of all time, but you can definitely tell where they're starting to get a bit more over the top with it all, which is why I think Terminator is, I mean, this is a controversial opinion. I think Terminator 2 held up better visually, but story-wise, the first Terminator by far beats it out the water.
The first one was genuinely a fascinating story, right? The second film was a bit, as they do, they, like you said, they up the ante, right? But the first film was it was a great story, let alone the visuals and obviously Arnie being Arnie on screen. The follow-up stories were just rehashes then, right? What I liked about the second film was about actually then going after Skynet itself, right? It was trying to do that.
Yeah, it definitely tried to expand the kind of scope of it, for better or for worse, I have to say, because then it was almost as if they were trying to cash in on the old films. Especially with Terminator 3, I don't know if you remember much of that, but, you've got him at the very beginning, Arnie, that is, trying on the funny glasses instead of the biker glasses. So it's meant to be more comedy instead of, serious action. And I mean, the first one was like a straight up horror film. I mean, you can definitely tell that with James Cameron, because the reason I think he came up with Terminator was because he got food poisoning on the production of, I want to say Piranhas 2, I think the film was, or some like very obscure film. And, he really wanted to make it. People said it wouldn't work, and now it's one of the most iconic films of all time.
Well, my final thing on it is as you said, it's like Terminator and Terminator 2 is almost like Gremlins and Gremlins 2, right? The first was a horror / supposed to drive fear into you, whereas the second ones became a bit comedic then, didn't they? And lighter. Okay, right. We are going to now do the same, but you're a variety podcast and gaming is a big part of your podcast. So what game? I mean, I don't know necessarily Christopher Lee and Colin Baker what video games they may like, but what game would you make us play?
Well, it's not going to be GoldenEye. I'll just get that out. I mean, can you imagine Christopher Lee seeing himself in GoldenEye? I don't even know if he was in GoldenEye. Like the game, I mean, not the film.
I think he was in one of the games. Yeah, I think I said he voiced a character.
He was in. Oh yeah, he was in Rogue Agent. I remember that.
But the original GoldenEye.
Because that was absolutely mind blowing hearing him. But I actually can't remember. But yeah, no. On that vein, there's 2 particular games that I feel as if would be good, because I was going to be joking and very facetious and say, oh, we should play Overcooked, but I feel as if none of us would talk to one another again after that. It's a very high stressful game. See, no, seriousness, Time Splitters was one of them. Okay. If you want like an FPS game, because it's just such a fun game that you can either play through the story mode or you can just fight one another. One of the best FPS games I've ever played. It's a little bit dated now, but still a lot of fun. Or the other one is a cartoony beat-em-up game. Trust me to be an indie hipster here, but Castle Crashers was the other one.
Yeah.
Where you play as like wee cartoon knights, and then you have to just fight to save the princess. It's a very silly, cartoony, over-the-top game. But again, it was one that I was introduced to at uni, and is one that I keep introducing people who aren't really into gaming with this one. Because even my partner, she isn't a big fan of gaming, but she loves Castle Crashers. It's one of her favourite games of all time now. So, yeah, you've either got a beat 'em up game or an FPS time travel game.
After Terminator, so the
Yeah.
evening's getting more rowdy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and this is the bizarre question now, and we won't have too much time to go into the reasons for all of them, but if you could pick 3, I think I said to you video game characters, but I did mean to say any fictional characters. So if you've got fictional characters to mind, you can pick those. But I see I initially posed to you, if you could invite 3 video game characters to come have dinner with you, who would they be?
Well, the first one, and I just have to say Sonic the Hedgehog, because, okay. Like, I have to give the fans what they want. Just the huge, not disconnect, but just the kind of, what the hell? The second one, of course, has to be Shepard from Mass Effect, insert any version of Shepard you want in here. Yeah. Again, just don't bring up the Batarians and you'll be fine. The third character, see, to be honest, I wasn't really sure, because initially I was going to say Mario, just for the kind of giggles of watching him and Sonic just fight over the Viennetta. But how funny would it be, right? You're watching Terminator, and then you actually invite a Terminator that's obviously like a good Terminator, of course, but you invite Arnie as the Terminator, and you're watching it, and then it's like, those viral videos where they turn around and they go, "Oh my god!"
So, it'll be like that meme of Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the screen, clicking his You're going to blow his mind if you're going to invite a Terminator to watch the Terminator.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's either that or, inviting a second Christopher Lee to the party, just as Saruman or Goldfinger.
I might be making an early exit from this dinner party. Can I take this to go, please, Satsu?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, look. I hope you had some fun doing that. I think those are brilliant choices, and a fun evening all round, I think.
Yeah, no, thank you. Except for the chaotic ending, of course.
The chaotic ending, which I didn't see coming. Yes,
because I mean, I have to say, I was semi-tempted to invite Tom Nook on, but then I thought, you know what, I don't want to be talking about mortgages with a raccoon the whole evening.
No, so just bring a Terminator,
Yeah, just bring a Terminator to round off the evening. Get out of my house,
Look, thank you again for taking part in this. I keep saying this every time. I'm going to ask you to let people know or plug your pod and your socials again. But, with the amount of listens you get, everybody's already listening to you. But go ahead, tell people where they can find you.
Well, thank you as always, Dan, for having me on. Honestly, it's such a pleasure being on these, and just absolutely being silly myself. But if anybody else wants to listen to more episodes from myself, as well as collaborations that Dan and I have done, then you can check us out on our website, chatsunami.com, as well as all good podcast apps. We are also on a huge list of social medias. You can catch us on Twitter /X at ChatSunamiPod. We are also on Instagram at ChatSunami. We're on Facebook at ChatSunami. We're on YouTube at ChatSunami. We're on Threads. I was going to say Blue Sky, haha, but we'll see about that. No, we are on Blue Sky, but just not very active. But please feel free to check us out. And once again, Dan, thank you so much.
My pleasure. So if you're not, go subscribe on all those things to Chatsunami. You're listening to me, so you know where to find a podcast. If you want to get hold of me, if you want to be on one of these episodes, just search for Casting Views across all social media. Drop me an email at castingviewspod@gmail.com. I'm going to ask a massive favour. In that voice, can you just please tell everyone to come back next week for another episode of Casting Views?
Absolutely. Come back next week for another episode of Casting Views.
1, 2, 3, 4. If I want your opinion, I will give it to you. Come on, check what we got, 'cause you need it. Don't make us get